Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I am Phil Fitzgerald, Chief Impact Officer of the Philadelphia Foundation, which is the largest community foundation in this region. And I've recently returned to the foundation. I was there for 8.5 years, left for 3 years, now I'm back. And I'm back to this buzz around economic mobility. So it's a really exciting time in our region and a time of partnership. And we're working with partners like Comcast and William Penn and Pew, Bank of America, Chamber of Commerce, Brookings Metro, and the Federal Reserve. So we're really happy to be here representing that coalition. And as a native of Philadelphia, I have seen long-term investment. I've seen the need for long-term investment in movements like the one we have now. So I'm really happy to be leading this work. But the thing that really gets me is I've seen us get caught up on needing to invest right now and not planning for the future. So this is a really timely conversation with the 2026 moment coming up. So this afternoon, I'd like to have a conversation about what real, long-lasting change could look like, how we measured that change, and what cross-sector leadership, collaboration, and bravery, you like that one, don't you, Claire? Bravery is required in Philadelphia to make this happen. So with that framing, I'd like to bring in our panelists. So I'll have each of you sort of, name, rank, serial number, and then what brings you to this work in economic mobility? So I'll start with you, Claire.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Phil. Thanks all for having us. So again, I'm Claire Greenwood. I lead the Chamber of Commerce for Greater Philadelphia's economic competitiveness work. And that really means all the ways that we're thinking about how to help grow jobs and businesses in the region and how to connect people to those jobs. I know my colleague Nikki is also here, so lots of us thinking about the issues of growth in our community, but also not just growth for growth's sake, how we think about growth and the shared prosperity of all of our residents and neighbors. What brings me to this work, I guess, as a lifelong Philadelphian, just a love of this place, a commitment to thinking about how we continue to improve it, but also a feeling that we've always punched below our weight, right? We kind of seek the world stage, but are always almost there and not quite there, and certainly not in a way that is equitable across all neighborhoods and communities, at least the way we think about the greater Philadelphia region.
Thank you.
Marek Gootman, Brookings Metro. My current role is about taking think tank, novel analysis and ideas and making it applied to real places and have direct impact versus drafting really fascinating policy papers and hoping that someone does something about that. So we worked with 50-some city regions, private, public, civic, philanthropic collaboratives in order to solve problems at the scale that they really happen in the economy, which is across political boundaries and assets, workforce, firms, supply chains, things that are shared at a regional level, both in the US and internationally. And for me, Philadelphia, we've done work with Philadelphia in the past, but I'm now I have to say, because I have 3 kids and they were all born and raised in Washington, D.C., so I have to say kind of like I'm from D.C., which is the source of all good knowledge and activity. So here to help, right? But I'm from here. I grew up here. I went to school here. My son goes to school here, and I feel like this place in particular really shaped me. And most people, when I meet them, I say, where are you from? I say, well, I grew up in Philadelphia. They say, oh, that explains a lot. So the attitude and the action. So I'm very committed to this place in particular and the work that we're doing here.
Hi, Good to see everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Ashley Putnam. I direct the Economic Growth and Mobility Project that is a strategic initiative out of the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. And before I get started today, I do have to give my standard Federal Reserve disclaimer that my views expressed today are mine alone and do not represent the Federal Reserve System, the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, or the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. There we go. All right, now I can say whatever. I've been leading this initiative for about 7.5 years. And this work was launched at the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia with a really specific purpose, which is this is a city that has historically struggled in terms of its metrics around economic mobility. And I think much like Marek, a lot of what my job is at the Philly Fed is to think about how do we go from this incredible research that we produce and this knowledge we have about the labor market and the economy, and how do we actually connect that to policy, to practice, particularly on a local level. And so a lot of my work has really been to think about how do we actually move the needle on some of these issues of economic mobility, thinking about that intersection of research and practice, as well as, I think personally, I came to Philadelphia. I'm not a native, but I felt like coming from New York City, where I had done this work on labor market and inclusive growth, there is an opportunity here to tell a different story. And for the city to grow in a different way that is resilient, that is inclusive. And we do know from our research that cities that grow in a way that promotes upward mobility, puts money into the hands of consumers, it's actually really good for economic growth. It's also good for economic resilience. And it's generally good for the economy. So on behalf of the Fed, I'm here because it's good for the economy, on myself, because I do think there's an opportunity here for Philadelphia to do something different.
Thank you for that, Ashley, and thanks for admitting to not being from Philadelphia. I have to call you out, but really happy to have your voice. And I want to start with you. Actually, you sort of teed it up really nice. So you led, the Federal Reserve Bank's National Summit on Economic Mobility 2 weeks ago now. Feels yeah. You did a great job. It was the hottest ticket in town. Hopefully, some of you were there. But can you set the stage by telling us the Fed's impetus for organizing the event and what you hoped to accomplish with it? So sharing any research or any data about the city, yada, yada, yada. Go ahead.
Yeah, so as I said before, we really sit on our research at the Fed. One of the things we're really interested in is, again, how we bring that research into practice. But the other thing that motivates us is our dual mandate. So we do have a mandate to think about price stability and maximum employment. And we've been really challenging that idea on maximum employment, that this is just people having jobs. Because I think part of what we're interested in is, are you able to have the kinds of choices you would like in the economy and in the labor market? So it's not just do you have any job, but do you have a job that provides you stability, upward mobility, a job that is something where you know whether or not you're going to be able to make ends meet, whether or not you can pay bills. And so this is a continuing trend we've seen in some of our economic data in terms of our labor market that is very bifurcated right now. We just did some research that we released at the summit on economic mobility in Philadelphia, and part of our goal was really to share that research. And one of our big takeaways was, if you ask someone, what does economic mobility mean to you? They share a variety of different things, right? As economists and researchers, we think about, big intergenerational economic mobility. Are your kids doing better than you are? Did you do better than your parents? But a lot of the folks we talk to in Philadelphia, what they are seeking is not necessarily that ladder up. They're seeking a stable floor. And so what people were telling us was really that the labor market is unstable, that jobs are not providing them upward mobility, that they're working piecemeal and gig work, and that people are really seeking an opportunity to move up that economic ladder by seeking stability first. So our goal with the summit was really to bring national thought leaders together. We had fantastic folks from across the country, including folks here on stage, as well as business leaders from the private sector. We had some mayors join us from different cities, just to think about what does it look like to move the needle on these things locally. And really to look at these cross-sector collaboratives. I think that was one of the themes we came away from this, is you have to work with people across different places. But our hope was really to take that research we produce and that mandate we have and say, how do we bring that research into practice in this city? And how do we change not just what's happening in Philadelphia, but all of the cities that we're attending, their capacity to kind of address these issues, both with really great research and some great best practices that we heard from around the country. So it's a great time. We're happy for our partners in the Philadelphia Foundation and many of our partners here in this room who really helped that conversation. The first time we had a conversation conversation like that. And as Philip alluded to, we sold out. We didn't know there would be that much interest. But I will also conclude by saying, I think that says something, that at this moment in time, people are very hungry for this conversation, that this isn't just something that's an interesting thought or charity or work that we maybe should do. It's something that's really becoming an economic imperative. And we were really excited to be part of that.
Yeah, that's important. As I said, my last job, I worked for a national funder, and I was seeing this across the country. So we're part of a growing movement. So thank you for reminding us of that, because in Philadelphia, we sometimes forget, right? So Ashley just shared with us, so this is for you, Marek. Ashley just shared with us how people are connecting to better jobs as a pathway to economic stability and then mobility. And so we know you've been doing a lot of work, research with Pew, one of our partners, as we said. Can you talk about those quality jobs and what they are in the greater Philadelphia region? Can you please give us an overview of what the now and the next is? And then another question, how does tech play into these jobs?
Sure. Well, first of all, one of the most interesting things for us from the work that Ashley and the Fed have been doing was, you talk a lot about economic mobility and people tend to think about barriers to access. So the first thing is like, well, we don't have childcare, or SEPTA doesn't get us where we need to go, or I've got a housing problem. All of those fundamental things, which are critical, but in the qualitative feedback that Ashley gathered from her work, the number 1, 2, and probably 3 things that people said was, I just need a better job, right? And that shows for us who've been working in this region for about 18 months, I'll explain a little bit about that. For us, that's really important, because we could train all the people to the perfect level of fit with employer demands and provide them with childcare and give them transportation, and we still would be unable to dramatically move this needle on economic mobility, because there aren't enough quality jobs being created in our economy to give them opportunity. So we need a balance. We absolutely need to be able to connect people who are disconnected and neighborhoods from what's happening in the economy, which, as I said, is regional. But we need to make the economy work better and focus our very constrained time and effort on those areas where we're most likely to have quality job creation that's accessible to offer middle income workers. So that's our orientation. The regional economy, and we came in, we were invited by Pew and a collection of other stakeholders in Philadelphia, but also working across the region, the 5-county region, and with the Chamber of Commerce and others around how do we improve the economic performance for those quality job outcomes, not just job counts. And there is a good amount of momentum around that thinking for economic developers and coordination with workforce development. The economy here I like to look at it in an asset base, because we talk about Philadelphia from a deficit base all that time. And I won't use the phrases because I don't want to repeat them, but we have such untapped potential in this region. And we should be focusing on how to unlock the potential, then repeat the fact that we are rated X or Y in some metric that doesn't look good against our peers. That said, our economy doesn't look that great against our peers in terms of its performance. If we had matched based on our industry mix, the growth of our economy against a national benchmark in traded sectors, that's the kind of stuff we sell outside the region as opposed to each other, and brings more money, fresh money into the region. That's how you create wealth. We would have had, over the past 10 years, 100,000 more jobs in that category. And by our metrics, 70,000 of them would be that kind of self-sufficiency, not just get by, but sort of get ahead category. So we're missing 70,000 quality jobs in our economy because we're not maximizing that potential. And I know I'm going on probably for too long, but I'll just transfer that to the areas of opportunity that we've identified. And there are a lot of different things that could be done, but there are 3 particular areas I'll just highlight briefly and we might get back to, and just an underlying challenge about delivering on them. So one is, unsurprisingly, we're really good at life sciences. This is more a tweak than anything else in terms of our focus to just expand a little bit where we put our emphasis in around our life sciences capabilities and capture more of the production side in terms of therapeutics and medical devices and things like that. We have put a lot of emphasis in other areas and in discovery, but we haven't been able to retain some of these firms to early stage and growth. And that's been a long-standing issue for the region, and it's nothing new, but it is something to emphasize in our relatively well-organized life sciences industry. The other 2 for me are more interesting, and I'll save the real tech-focused one for last. We're still good at manufacturing stuff, right? Against trends, but we're particularly good at manufacturing certain kinds of things with certain kinds of companies, small and mid-sized firms all around the region, in Philadelphia as a city, but also in the surrounding counties, in things like materials, machining, and fabrication, and certain kinds of electronic components. And when we've talked with firms in these categories, they have, to the 80% response rate, said we could actually grow. We have the demand for what we do, but we don't have principally the workers to do it. So again, not shocking, but we underemphasize the opportunity areas in making stuff in this region, and we have the potential to sustain and grow that category. There are other issues like succession planning and so on. The big one, though, that's novel and was exciting to us in particular was in the technology. And people have talked for a long time about what is Philadelphia distinctive at with regard to technology. I mean, Tech Week is a big, broad set of activities. Enterprise digital solutions. It's going to work. It's going to work, Claire. Enterprise digital solutions. It's the business-to-business, back office, kind of middle office, software platforms and services that make firms more efficient. We're anchored in financial services and healthcare, right, and regulated sectors, but also in some manufacturing. And we sell this stuff outside. There's stuff that we do inside, like a Vanguard or a Comcast does this inside for themselves. And then there's spin-offs. So Citco, for example, spun off as financial services. There's SEI, SAP, all these big names that you all probably recognize. But if you walk down the street and said, "Where's SAP?" It's headquartered in Newtown Square, right? Boomi, one of the fastest growing in this category in the entire country. So these kinds of firms are the ones that have jacked up 40,000 jobs, at least conservatively in this region, around that category. That's bigger than Princeton, the whole the city of Princeton plus, and growing in a 20% clip. So again, we can go back into what that means for everybody, but those are the opportunity areas we think are really important and related to the tech space.
Thank you, Marek. And I asked the question, but I didn't. Did we define what a quality job is? Does anyone have a quick shorthand? Quick.
I was going to say, I'll jump on a couple if Marek's got. So we did some research on this before the Survey of Economic Mobility. I led a project at the Fed called the Worker Voices Project, where we asked workers how they defined a quality job. And it varies. And there's a lot of different definitions out there. The Aspen Institute has been leading work on how we define job quality for quite some time. But for most people, the primary thing they're looking at that kind of surrounds all of it that came away from our definition is pay, right? Compensation. Can you make enough money to know that you're going to be able to pay rent, pay for the basic cost of living in the place that you're at? But from there, there's also some other pieces of that. And some of those are things that we're not great at measuring at the Federal Reserve, like dignity, or choice. So people feeling like they actually are treated well by their employer. There's other things that people looked at, including benefits, time off, but the ability to move up, or the promise of being able to move around in the company, was also something that was really interesting to folks. So we found stability first. We have a little graphic of this at the Philly Fed website where we say pay kind of is undergirding all of our job quality definition. But when we asked people what they saw and why they would choose one job over another, sometimes the stability of the hours made someone prefer a job that actually paid a little bit less, because they felt like the stability of the hours and the ability to possibly move up made it a better quality opportunity than, maybe something that was a gig or contract-based job that they knew would have an end, and then they'd be back into the labor market and back looking again. And I know that's something we heard a lot in our survey here as well.
Just real quick for our analysis, a rate of wages marked to the family composition in the region that enables you not just to have net zero at the end of the month, but emergency savings plus retirement-oriented savings, or to buy a house or get some more education. Employer-provided health care as a proxy for other benefits, and this durability question of over a 10-year period of time, can you sustain in that kind of a job? And is it subject to a lot of macro trends, or does it lead to another job? And for us, we also were able to parse out what is a promising job, that you enter into a job, but over a 10-year period, tracking you across careers and industries, you end up in a quality job, which is a reasonable period of time to gain experiences. I'll say that in the enterprise tech category, 40% of the jobs are accessible, that we identified are accessible to people without a 4-year degree, which is a really important factor. And about 75% of those jobs meet the standard of either quality or promising. So that's another really significant reason why we are honing in on this opportunity area.
Thank you. Claire, let's bring you into the conversation, right? So we have Ashley talking about employees and potential employees. We have Marek talking about sectors for growth. And now we kind of want to talk about employers from the chamber side. So we know you all at the chamber do a lot of employer organizing. And you are thinking about innovative ways for employers to, around industry partnerships. So could you please tell us about this work, how it's taking shape, and what excites you about it?
Sure. So I think, at least from where we sit, to your point, Phil, at the chamber, we really view our role as better organizing the demand for workers. So what does that demand look like? In what areas? Where are there opportunities in the current environment and potential future for ongoing growth? Increasingly pushing on where we can organize that demand and nudge the demand directionally towards innovative solutions or partnerships with others in the region to think about non-traditional ways of hiring or upskilling workers. So really all on the, to your point, employer and talent and workforce demand side. I think along with the work that Marek's describing, one of the real opportunities in the fact that this conversation is happening on a regional basis is that we're not only sharing these priority areas across the Southeast Pennsylvania economic development organizations and trying to work together on a shared strategy for proactively growing more jobs in those spaces. We're really trying to bring alongside of that the workforce strategy so that we're thinking about growing jobs and filling jobs at the same time, and not one in front of the other. Because I think, to Marek's point, there's not enough job growth, particularly in traded sectors and certainly in the kinds of categories that he's describing in terms of quality jobs in our environment today. But there's always the potential for pushing on growth for growth's sake without really thinking about how to make that growth equitable. And this idea of having a shared strategy across the region that is integrated, economic growth and workforce development sort of at its core and from the beginning, I think really gives us an opportunity to do what, Ashley, you were talking about, which is to just do this differently from the outset. So that excites me. I think one of the potential ways from an activation around these potential strategies for each of the sectors is really to think about the industry partnership model as a way of driving industry-led partnerships on the workforce side as we think about how to grow opportunities. We see a lot of this activity today, right? So we're already working in markets to think about how we encourage companies in some of the spaces we're talking about. Some will be new to expand their operations in Greater Philadelphia. So either attracting those companies from outside or supporting companies who are local to expand, and really bringing these together in an intentional way is what I get excited about, because I think we can solve problems at scale in a way we haven't had a chance to before.
That is great, and I'm looking at our questions, and we did a really good job organizing these. But actually, I wanted to go back to you, Marek, and to build on what Claire said around growth for growth's sake and around equitable growth, right? So if you you can grow the pie, but that doesn't mean everyone's still going to have the same access to it or the same amount of pie, right? So from your work at Brookings and the work nationally and locally, so where are there areas of opportunity? Make sure I get to the meat of the question. What are some key strategies around accomplishing that growth?
Well, I think it really goes back to what Claire said and the emphasis around integrating economic and workforce development activities from the jump. And we have a challenge here because economic development systems and investors have typically emphasized job creation or new capital expenditures as the metrics for success. I'm going to try to shift away from that. And for workforce developers, has been heavily emphasized in their measures and their regulations and their policy choices, more on the public sector side, for who's trained and not necessarily even placed or sustained in particular kinds of jobs. So marrying those up, those don't sync well. There's a lot of jobs in, like, I'll call it less quality, not self-sufficiency being created in the region. And it is a measure for workforce development to say, I've trained and placed someone in a particular job, but not necessarily the kind of job that you will be able to get ahead in. And so lining up, and there are examples of this around the country, lining up the economic development choice with the workforce development priority is a huge challenge, but really where the sweet spot is for having success. And linking with not just generally being available, but linking specifically, as I said, to those disconnected communities. You can't bring the economy effectively into neighborhoods. You have to link up neighborhoods to where the economy works and opportunity is. When you're thinking about traded sectors, yes, grocery stores, quality of life, et cetera, that's community development, but effectively economic development, it's where jobs are being created. You cannot control that on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. And therefore, we have to be just very deliberate about reaching those places where people don't have opportunity and linking them up into the broader regional economy. And I'll say this, being in Philadelphia, that does not stop at the Philadelphia city boundary, and vice versa. 25% of people who live in Philadelphia work outside of Philadelphia. At minimum, 35% of the people who live in Bucks, Montco, Chester, and Delaware counties work across a boundary. So if we think that way, right, we have to reach where the opportunity is, and this is a primary purpose of organizing by industry and linking up workforce activities with where employers are demanding workers.
Can I add to that, Phil?
Yes, please.
Because I'm excited about this. And I have to say, what is exciting about this stage and about everybody who is together here having these conversations is, for a really long time, historically, economic development existed over here and workforce development existed over here. And we had those conversations in complete silos. And I've been in the workforce
different language.
Using
too.
very different language,
Like
right.
completely different language.
And I feel like that's one of the first conversations you and I had at some point, Claire. And coming from a kind of national perspective, having seen how other cities have struggled through this, this can lead to really inequitable growth if you do these things totally separately. And there has been a push over the past 10, 15 years from the workforce development space to say investing in people is economic development. Growing talent is good for economic growth because it also helps attract those employers. And so this is exciting to me where Philly is right now, because there's really been this coming together across these sectors to say, we can't do one thing without the other. We can't keep speaking different languages. And if we're going to be a city that grows in a way that is sustainable and resilient, as you've seen in cities across the country, we need to have these conversations at the same table. And I think just being here on this stage and seeing how this work has been coming together over the past several years, this really is, like, there's a happy note here, guys. This is a moment where Philly is really thinking very seriously along those lines.
And but this really requires, and this is the challenge for this region, it requires business community leadership at a level that isn't fully realized now, right? In places where this is working effectively, you have substantial C-suite level CEO leaders who are saying, we're going to invest in these sector plays and this workforce development in tandem, and forcing the systems to work together, because by nature, they're not well suited to work together. And so I just emphasize that the capacity to say a lot. How is harder than the what. Like, we can say, yes, this is a fantastic opportunity area. How many times have we not been able to follow through and execute on a really good idea? And that's because we're underinvested in this region, in the capability. No matter how hard Claire and her team rows, there aren't enough oars in the water. So we need more of that focused and business-led investment in order to deliver on these visions.
Thank you for that, and thank you for that bravery. That's what I was talking about. And I appreciate you saying that. And on our prep call, we sort of talked about philanthropy stepping up, and we've got our act together. So COVID-19 was a turning point for the philanthropic community, and we sort of realized we needed to all work together, and it's been continuing on since then. So I'm glad you brought up the business side. I won't say any more about that.
Philanthropy could do more too. So.
Philanthropy can do more, but we're all talking, and that's the beginning of it, right? And you can continue to call us out. Please do. And so I wanted to do two more things. Well, we have 10 minutes left, shoot. Okay, because we only have 10 minutes left, I'm going to go to the last question, the future question. As I mentioned before, the Philadelphia Foundation is doing this economic mobility strategy. It's going to be over the next 10 years. So we're in it for the long term. As a community foundation, that's one of our superpowers. We have longevity. We are a permanent institution. So we have responsibility to support the community now and look to the future. So all of you brilliant people up here on stage, and we'll start with you, Claire. 2026 is a moment of visibility for Philadelphia that gives us a spotlight and attracts employers, talent, and economic growth investment. If we project 10 years forward to 2036, what do we hope Philadelphia will look like in terms of economic mobility, technology, and growth? And what is the story we want to tell about our city?
I always feel like being first is good and bad, right? Hopefully you all say, yeah, what she said, and not something different. I think to the heart of your question, I think next year is a big opportunity, lots of eyes on our community. I think we're getting organized in a way that we haven't been before. We're having a shared conversation about the same problem, Ashley, to your point, in a way that's sort of across sector, across interests, in ways that, at least in the 20 years I've been at the chamber, I have not seen that kind of coalescing around a challenge. So I think there's a lot of power in that we have a moment to really take forward. 10 years from now, I think, Marek, to the things you don't want to talk about, I think I would love to see the sort of headline written about our region, that we have blazed a trail in how a community can be obsessively focused on this question of growing inclusively and have had successes to show for it, that we've shown that as a model, that maybe Marek and his team are writing case studies about the way in which our community has done that, and we're talking about it with others and saying this is how we made it work. I think if we can also change the narrative locally that we are asset or opportunity rich, and because I do find that's a Philadelphia behavior. As a lifelong Philadelphian, right? We are our own worst critics, and I think the opportunity to one, show up next year and tell the people who come to visit this place why it's a great place to live, work, and do business, but then to actually change the way we see ourselves and to project that forward. I think both of those things, sort of the cultural change and how we cheer for our community, and to the ability to really reflect back on successes in aggressively growing our community in an inclusive way.
Well, we'll have won the World Series and won another Super Bowl, so
more World Series.
we'll be very happy.
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
you. I'm gonna jump to Ashley, and let you go.
I mean, I think to Claire's point, there is an opportunity here to change a narrative, right? And I'm not going to say the thing Marek doesn't want us to say about the headlines that probably brought me to Philly and the reason why this city had such a big focus on poverty and on upward mobility. And I will say, our keynote speaker at the Economic Mobility Summit was Raj Chetty, and he's released a study that shows that over the past 10 years, Philadelphia has decreased relative to other cities in its economic mobility. So one of my first hopes is that in 10 years from now, that'll be the exact opposite. We will be the success story of a city that came together across sectors, that made investments in people. And I think my other hope is that we do that with human beings at the center of the work. So in the same way we talk about economic mobility in these really big, broad strokes, and I do think we can kind of focus on the limitations and the barriers. I always say this, and I think it's important, that research we did where we asked people about economic mobility, they talked a lot about how the job market was difficult, how they were struggling to make ends meet, how they were piecing together bits and pieces of income. They talked about barriers. And, the economists ask is, well, why don't you just leave? If Philly's so bad, why don't you just leave? And every single person in these groups said, I don't want to leave. I like it here. This is my community. This is where I'm from. These are my people. We did this in person with a group of people, and it almost turned into like a Philly love fest about how much people love the city. And I think that's an asset we don't realize. That's really important. People want to be here. People want to grow here. We have incredible talents that we are leaving on the sidelines that could be future entrepreneurs, that could be future CEOs and leaders. And so my hope would be that the narrative we rewrite is how we invested in people who are already here in Philly to create economic mobility for everyone that's coming in the future. And I'm going to give you one quote, because part of my work here is to say, it's not my definition of economic mobility, but the ones that other people are using. This was someone who spoke at the summit, and I'm trying to remember, she said it so perfectly. She said, economic mobility is not about a better paycheck. It's about dignity and purpose and the power to shape your own future. That is what I would like to see in the city in the future.
Thank you. Marek.
Should have ended with you. So I'm always reminded in these discussions about that famous billboard from right around when I was growing up, which is, Philadelphia isn't as bad as Philadelphians say it is. As you hate that billboard? It's like almost as much as I hate the thing that shall not be named. So I did that. Just always reminds me when we talk about these things about like Philadelphia saying what its assets are. But for me, I'll be super transactional about this. 10 years is a reasonable period of time to see progress. 20 years is a much more reasonable time to see fundamental change. So we need to be 10 years from now executing on a shared set of tactics across economic and workforce actors in the region that has followed through that duration with sufficient amounts of money to make a difference, and not be worrying about things on a 1, 2, 3 year cycle where something's sexy and then suddenly the next thing is shinier, right? And if we do that, then I want to see in this particular area the opportunity. I want to see that enterprise, digital solutions jacked up by twice the amount of growth in this region. And when people say, what's Philly's tech, unique tech competitive advantage? I want them to say something specific, and that works for me. So we're not generic here. If we are generic, we're going to be just like every other place that says that they have a tech strength. So at the end of that 10 years, follow through, resourced, execution, something very specific, and Philadelphia known not just for being a tech space, but a particular tech space where quality jobs are available to middle skill workers, and we're all better off. And my son wants to stay here after he's done college and not leave for some place with other opportunity. So that's it.
Thank you very much.